You are a mathematics graduate. How do you bridge that with becoming the chief design officer at Titan Company?
The biggest myth is really that the leader of design need not be a designer. But a great designer who has all these competencies can certainly be a design leader.
How did you conceptualize this and say, this is what Titan needs?
Organization like Titan needs to have a center of excellence in design. I brought in everything other than design to the table. My job was to give them the right direction. I have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Squircle and now I think Ultra Slim is your latest release.
Edge is something we had fabulous innovation, the slimmest watch in the universe kind of a platform. The in-depth understanding of the user, looking at what the trends are and what trends are going to make an impact, and a great inspiration. Amalgamation of all three, what comes out is really the super success formula.
What has that innovation journey been like? And how did you consistently commit to it?
It's not easy to come up with breakthrough innovation, every year.
How did you balance everything?
I am also deeply rooted in spirituality. What we think, what we send out in the universe, and the whole law of attraction we talk about, it is all based on energy.
Today on the podcast, we are joined by Revathi Kant, a trailblazing design leader who has redefined the way that India thinks about design and innovation. As the Chief Design Officer at Titan Company, she has spearheaded some of the most iconic watch and jewelry collections across the country. With over 3 decades of shaping consumer experiences, Revathi is celebrated as one of the most influential women in business. She's a passionate advocate for women in leadership and the power of design to transform everyday life. I want to start by asking you, you are a mathematics graduate, and yet you have deep experience in marketing. How do you bridge that with becoming the Chief Design Officer at Titan Company?
Very interesting question, and a lot of people ask me this. So let me give you an analogy. So when I look at my role as Chief Design Officer at Titan, I think it's very similar to the role of a director in movies. A great director is not necessarily a great actor. But in both our roles, we really bring vision to life. He works on the script and makes a movie. In my case, I got to work with business goals and translate them into design solutions. The other thing which I find very common is storytelling. And movie is all about storytelling, as we all know. And I got to narrate stories based on user experiences. That is the second similarity. And third, it's all about leadership and collaboration. So when you're working with so many different kinds of people, cross-functional teams, stakeholders, and the users, to get great results. And that's really the very, very important part of this role. And last but not the least, attention to detail. A director goes through frame after frame to get that perfect shot. And in my role, I got to look at every element to make sure that we are getting out a great design, which really works. So if I were to look at, the competencies for a design leader, it's typically, of course, being creative is really important. Strategic thinking. Emotional intelligence. It's very, very important. You work with a lot of people, and I think that's really very critical. Communication. And of course, a deep understanding of the subject called design. So, when I started off this, and I was also a little skeptical as to, when I'm taking up this role, if it's going to work for me or not, and how is it. But when it all worked out and I reflect on it, these are the things I think which were very clear. So the biggest myth is really that, which I have busted for myself and for my company, is that the leader of design need not be a designer. But a great designer who has all these competencies can certainly be a design leader. So I think that's how I would kind of, justify this whole thing and feel that, I have been in this role, I have done this, and I guess this is what I bring to the table.
Fantastic. So this season of the Iconic Women podcast is actually all about creative people, women in the creative field. So we have designers, architects, artists, all of that, right? And you're actually the only person that is on this season who isn't technically a designer, and yet you're leading design for a company as large as Titan, So I'm super interested to sit down and talk to you about what are the different ways in which you've thought this through and joined the dots and then navigated this for so long and, taken it this far. So you said this is that myth busting that you've done, that the a non-design person can lead design. But what brought you to design in the first place? I mean, someone who's done mathematics, is that what you're trained in exactly?
I did my graduation in mathematics. I did my postgrad in operations research, which is all statistics and numbers.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then you got into marketing and you led marketing for Titan.
I joined Titan. I interned in Titan and I did on a topic called sales forecasting. And then I got an offer from the organization and they were setting up a new team for market research. More than that, I didn't want to sit behind the computer and look at information and analyze. That's something I never wanted to do, so I did not choose that. And I took up the job, and initial phase, I was handling market research. That's when I realized, I was talking a lot to consumers, drawing insights, and trying to understand in the early stages how these insights are important for any decision making in a business context. So that was my grounding. So the numbers were there. I had to interpret numbers. I had to make sense out of those numbers, quantify them, and justify why it is important to do this action.
Yeah.
So that was really my grounding in market research.
Right.
Then an opportunity came by in international business for marketing. And I got an opportunity to do that. And marketing was also new to me. I'm not done my MBA. And it was learning on the job. And it was a different geography with different set of challenges. And I really feel that when you're really pushed to a corner and when you're like, figure it out and do it, and that's when, and you are focused on the results and you're really excited with the challenges, you find immense possibilities. And that's what happened. And I moved to marketing after maybe 4 years in research.
Okay.
And the research gave me a good grounding to look at marketing in a certain manner. And I was based out of Dubai. I was there for 10 years looking after West Asia and Africa for Titan.
And this was for Tanishq specifically?
No, it was only Titan. That time we were just about, this was 1995.
We're talking pre-Tanishq.
Yes.
Okay.
Tanishq came somewhere at that time, was just launched in India.
I see.
So it was not Tanishq, it was Titan watches. And that was a very interesting journey. Lot of learnings, lot of challenges. And that's how marketing happened. So marketing just happened.
Yeah.
And after 10 years, when I wanted to come back, and I was like, what do I do now? I want to do something different. And I would say I did not choose design. I really did not choose design. Design chose me. Design chose me 20 years back.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that that particular thing was such an important step in my life, in my career. It's been career defining.
Right.
I really never thought that I would reach the heights I have reached through design. And that's been the journey. So I did not choose. I was like open to whatever comes, what is the next opportunity. But when you come back from a different geography in an organization which is running, you look for what opportunities are available.
Yeah.
And the one which was offered to me, and a lot of credit to my seniors who thought I was a suitable person. Then I did not believe myself that I was the best person to do this job. Full credit to that person who said,
and who is that person?
And that's
or who are those people?
Biju Kurian. He was the CEO then of COO, I think, of Watches Division.
Okay.
And he said, you take on this role. And I'm like, I don't know anything about design. But he said, no, you can do it. And that, his belief in me, more than my belief in myself to take on something new, a new domain, worked wonders. And when somebody places so much belief on you and thinks that you can do it, that places a lot of responsibility and ownership upon you.
That's true.
To make things work.
Yeah.
And that was the start of a very exciting phase in my life, I would say, 2005, 20 years back. And the last 20 years, I have been amplifying the voice of design in the organization. As you know, today design is the most important strategic asset for Titan. It plays a very integral role in every business.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where I wanted to bring design, and I'm happy with that.
And not just in the organization, but it's nationally recognized, right?
is,
That,
yes,
you know,
now,
Titan kind of really puts design at sort of front and center,
Absolutely.
at the heart and core of what it does.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about the Design Excellence Center that you helped establish, and I think that's been your baby from the start. You
Yeah.
know, but you know, before that, I want to ask you, coming from a marketing background into design and leading design. It's not that you took a design course and became a designer yourself. You just kind of went into design leadership. How did you use that to your advantage?
Yeah. In fact, as I told you, I moved in with a lot of excitement, at the same time, a lot of skepticism.
Yeah.
I knew for sure that I have to learn a lot because I really don't know the subject. It's not my domain expertise. But I also knew that 15 years before that, I have been very successful in my career doing what I did. So obviously, I have some inherent strengths. So my whole idea was, how am I going to bring my strengths to the table and make it work for me? So when I started understanding design, what I did was really first is to also build this whole rapport with the team. You know, because the team is wondering, okay, this individual has come who knows nothing about design. How is she going to make my life better? You know, that's really the first step to give them the confidence that, you know, whatever I have come here to do for you, it's going to benefit you. But the first step was really understanding. I spent time with each and every individual, each and every, the oldest to the youngest, really in depth talking to understand what they are doing, what are their challenges, how is it that I can help them, and all of that. And that conversation, which took, I think, over a month, really gave me a complete map of what's working, what's not working, where are the gaps, where I need to kind of, add value and make a difference. So once I had a clear understanding, and I started, and the best thing was, you know, all the team members, obviously designers, were looking design from a certain lens, from a design lens. And I decided to look at design from a consumer lens. I think that made a very fundamental shift in the way we did things. Because I am of the belief, given my background, to look at consumers and insight. And whom do you design for? You design for a user. There is somebody who's going to wear whatever you create and going to feel great or not so great about it, right? So you need to really understand the user. When that whole thing of consumer inciting, I brought it in the field of design and made my team also understand that we have to design for a user.
Yeah.
So bringing all that in, when you're taking care of consumer expectations, obviously you're creating customer delight.
Yeah.
And it is quite obvious that the business success would follow. So what started happening was what we were designing were not just beautiful, they started making business sense.
Right.
It started bringing in more business. So designs got onto the pedestal. Design became important. It was being viewed in the organization slightly differently. And that was a great feel for the team who was slogging, who were always working hard.
Yeah.
It is just that they didn't see their success being viewed that way.
Yeah.
So that was really my first steps to say that, yes, let's look at it like this. And things changed. So when it was successful, they felt good. They said, yes, she's coming and she's going to do something for us which makes our life better. So for me, the objective very clearly set out was, obviously, I was not wanting to become a great designer and design some fabulous product. But my objective was design, which was more like a support function. Even when I moved in, within a division, within a function, I wanted design to have its position. I wanted design to have the voice. I wanted the designers in the team to be recognized for what they do because they bring so much to the table.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, all that is not visible. So my job, I came as more as a evangelist or a visionary to really push this up. And I'm so glad that I've been able to do that, to give design its due in an organization. So design has to be core. Design has to be at the central of every strategy, and it is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is not recognized. It was not recognized even in Titan then. So my last 20 years of work has been to really push this up. So if you see, even structurally, it makes a difference, right? Where you sit in the organization. So today, when we set up Design Excellence Center, I report to the managing director. So to that extent, I have a seat on the table.
Yeah.
So my team obviously gets that kind of a prominence. So pushing designers to kind of, prominence and really appreciating, admiring the work, building a good design sensibility within the organization to appreciate design has also been an important role.
Yeah.
So when all of this happened, my team really began to trust and say that, yes, it's great to work with her because, I mean, also the other part is I'm not kind of competing with them in creating great designs. So
Right.
we have very open discussions, very strategic discussions, the directions we must take, what will work for the consumer, what are the nuances we should take care of. So I brought in everything other than design to the table. Designers are highly skilled. We have great designers.
Yeah.
They have the know-how. They come with from great institutes. They know how to design. My job was to give them the right direction, which is why I said my role is like that of a director, chiseling out what is not required, clearly focused, what is it that we need to get out of it.
Right.
So in this particular category, this segment, what is it that we need to do, which is different from what you have done in the past, which is different from what rest of the world is doing. So how do you build differentiation at the core of everything you do has been the motto. And I think that's kind of played well.
That sounds like a great partnership because, on the one hand, you have invested that time and effort into building a relationship not just with the designers, but also getting to the heart and core of how design works.
Yeah.
Without yourself becoming a designer.
Yes.
So it's that fine line that you kind of walk on. And I think, speaking as a designer and speaking on their behalf, I would think that it also is great for them because this is channelization, it's strategy, it is removing the non-essentials so that in fact then they can focus even more sharply on what they're great at.
Yes. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did DEC start? So how did you think at a time when it's very easy for us now to think back and say, oh yeah, there's a design excellence center at Titan, But when it really didn't exist and nobody had conceptualized this, and perhaps I'm guessing that in those days design was fairly siloed and everyone, all the designers sitting in their little things. How did you conceptualize this and say, this is what Titan needs and I'm going to build it and then I'm going to lead it?
Okay. Yeah. In fact, I was, when I came back, as I said, from Dubai, I was heading design for watches. I did it for 5 years. Then I moved to jewelry because jewelry was a larger part of the business. And that time it was felt that we need to bring this magic in jewelry. And I moved to jewelry and, stayed there for 8 years. And it was great fun. And, since I had learned the basics of design in watches, it was very easy to kind of put those in place and bring a lot more because jewelry gives you a lot more. And being a woman, I guess, and being close to the category, there are a lot of category truths also you bring into the table. It's a lot more of personal, investment into that particular
and which
business.
you intrinsically understand.
Absolutely.
Right?
It just comes to you intuitively. And so when that happened, so design was within every division. So watches had a design team, jewelry had a design team, every eyewear had it. So design was in silos. There was no one design community. And when you talk to the external world, this whole thing about Titan being a design-centric organization, it was all in bits and pieces, not necessarily having one common head and all aligned in thinking. So it was at that point in time, I did come across an article, when Indira Nui, at that point in time, had appointed a chief design officer. And that was the first I had read. I don't know if there anything called a chief design officer before that, but I had read, I forget the gentleman's name. She had actually recruited a chief design officer, and that was the first time I read a position of that nature for PepsiCo to do wonders. I mean, that was more from the packaging and the presence and that point of view. When I read that, the only thing that struck me, if PepsiCo can have a chief design officer,
why not Titan?
Why not Titan?
Yeah.
That was really the starting point. And if you have to have then you need to bring. Then I looked at design, and I had worked with the design team in watches. I had moved on to jewelry, but I could see so much of similarity. There is so much we can actually gain by being together. We can leverage each other's strengths. So this is a work which I started with our ex-MD, Mr. Bhaskar Bhatt, who was there.
Yeah.
And I took it up to him and saying that an organization like Titan needs to have a center of excellence in design, because at the heart of it, we are design-centric. And to kind of build that and really amplify it and make it big, we need to be all together. We need design community needs to be together. Of course, it's not easy in an organization like Titan. It took its own time. But I'm glad that that whole thought process, I mean, I had to kind of socialize it with all the CEOs within the organization and
And we're
it's not
talking
easy.
how long ago? I mean, which year roughly?
This would have been around 2015, 16 onwards, 16, 17.
I see.
So this was almost, I moved to jewelry in 2010. After 7 years in jewelry, see, I also have to look for what next for me. I had worked as design, I was looking at innovation, new product, a whole lot of things in jewelry. But then how do you go ahead? How do you move forward? How do you, whatever you have learned, how do you push it back within the organization?
Yeah.
So it was two things. Certainly, I had to think about my own career growth. Second, certainly was I was looking at the organization from a design point of view. And by then, I was a pure convert. Even the first few days, I used to call, even my designation was business head design. I was so skeptical to call myself as a design head.
And to drop the business part.
Yeah,
and
it was very difficult for me in my
Yeah.
first phase.
Yeah.
But I became very comfortable. Then I started representing design. And I used to always start a conversation saying, I'm not a designer.
Yeah.
I dropped that. I don't have to say that because I had to, initially, I was convincing myself, but I didn't have to do that. When I looked at design, when I look at Titan, so Titan is the only company I have worked. So all I think, all I do is Titan first. For me, Titan is more than a family. So
Wow.
whatever I say and do is keeping Titan at the heart of it. And I was very clear that this kind of a structure would bring immense benefits to Titan. And I could definitely do that. I could take the lead and do the ownership and set a path for future. So this is how it happened. This thought came to me thanks to that article I read. And I approached Bhaskar and a lot of discussions. It took its own time. And in 2017, December, we decided to go and form this entity called Design Excellence Center, where design teams from each division would come together.
Yeah.
And so Design Excellence Center came into being, say, from 1st January 2018. And we can see the benefits. There is so much, one is this whole community of designers. They think alike, they have a space, they experiment, they do multiple things. You get given a lot of opportunities.
And they
to
feel
do
heard
different
and
things.
understood.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you've created that space for
Yes,
them.
yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there's a lot of cross-pollination, right?
Yes.
Between jewelry and watches
Yes.
and perhaps accessories.
Yeah.
And is saris part of what you do as well?
No, not saris.
Saris
Other than
outside of
saris,
that.
everything
Yeah,
else.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
eyewear.
I'm sure there's an eyewear, yes. And I'm sure they all speak to each other in terms of, the process.
Not only speak to each other, we also float, you have something called floating projects, so which
Okay.
gives the opportunity for designers. So if they are working on, let's say, one category and they want to kind of experiment something else, a little boredom, designer wants to do different things.
Yeah.
It's all there. They can opt to do a project with, say, a jewelry head, or they can opt to do a project in another category which they are not worked on. We run things like design hackathons for a different category where everybody comes together. So there are a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
So we call it the sunlighting, not the moonlighting, but the sunlighting, wherein within part of this role, you
Yeah.
get to do other things.
Okay.
That's a big advantage of being in one ecosystem. It would be impossible if you're sitting in different silos within the organization.
Yeah. And this is more a personal question, but how come brand experience and visual merchandising kind of hasn't found its way into the DEC? Why is that separate? Is it because it's so linked to specific marketing functions? Or is there a way by which maybe that community can get closer to design as well?
Yeah. See, when it started, when I was heading design in watches, and that was for only watches division, that time it was integrated. I had both the VM and we used to call a VM Plus, which was the execution arm. The design arm was VM, the execution arm was VM Plus, and product design all sitting together.
Wow.
That was for one business. But what we saw increasingly with the network expansion and all of that, the role of VM also became a lot more localized, and it was very close to retail. So at some point, the decision was taken. So there are two parts to the BM strategy. One is the design part, which could certainly sit with the DEC team, or which could sit with the design team, but the execution part, which also comes with that, and there are multiple brands, multiple stores and all of that, and managing that centrally would be also, not so easy. And for quick agility and action, what has happened is that has moved to retail. So today, all of that in Titan, in every business, sits under retail of that business, so they have a better control and better execution. That is really the reason.
Right.
Yeah. And that works well because with product design, with so much happening, it's quite a lot.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So dealing with designers. I mean, we as designers have these little jokes about ourselves, as I'm sure the world has about us creative types. What has that journey been like for you? Because sometimes people say it's not easy to understand designers, and designers sometimes feel it's not easy for them to feel understood, and there's all of that. And I think you have like really walked that line beautifully. So how has that been for you?
Actually, initially when I came in, it was a little different. Even I experienced it. It is not. Then I had to understand that I'm dealing with a set of people who are highly creative. Ideas are, they're very possessive about their ideas and thought process because that's what they bring to the table, right?
Yeah.
And hence, there's some bit of air of insecurity. And I had to understand all this to, to kind of work with them well. I have one thing I've understood this, that I have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Seriously. That's exactly what I have learned.
Yeah.
To be comfortable being uncomfortable. And and that's come thanks to all my designers. But I've learned. Initially, it was like, I mean, you deal with, I worked with other people, but it was a little different. But I think designers are a little more sensitive. Fair enough. They are creative. They bring ideas to the table. So they're a little insecure that ye mera idea hai, somebody will take it. So you have, as a leader, your job is to build that transparency, build that mahal, so to say, where every designer has a freedom to express and has the freedom to feel secure about what they're bringing to the table. That's when, for innovation to thrive, you really need collaboration, you need adequate curiosity and a lot of freedom. And I think that's what I've tried. After understanding them, that's what I've tried to provide. That's why you see we have been quite consistent, consistently creative and differentiated in all that we do across businesses.
Right.
Unless it is driven like a process, unless it's driven like a culture, it cannot come. It can be one ad hoc. You can have one success here, one success there.
Right.
But if you have to consistently deliver results, it has to be driven, it has to be part of the culture. And that came to me from that understanding. So it's okay. I mean, each one of us, we are all different. So designers as a community, they bring certain things to the table. So they need a certain kind of a culture and an atmosphere to feel comfortable and express themselves. See, one thing I've learned is, even when we do these stories, deep design stories from which we draw inspiration, I ask the lead designer and the team, are you guys excited with it? Because I'm of a staunch believer that, you can't just thrust one story to them saying, acha banao.
Absolutely.
A designer has to believe in that. They need to feel excited about it. So they have to fully immerse themselves. And if they are confident, I don't have to look at it.
Then
I
it's going to
know it's going to work.
Yeah.
It is like that. So you need to kind of work with them. You really need to understand them. So really get into their shoes to understand who they are. For sure, they are different. Like Maggie, it's different.
Okay, thanks. So you, in the DEC, you look after categories which kind of span watches to jewelry to eyewear to accessories. How do you build coherence across such, sort of different categories?
Actually, each category is so different.
Yeah,
Each category has its own nuances. It has got its own, deep understanding, and each one is different. Okay, one overarching umbrella is they all more or less, we are all in the lifestyle space.
Sure.
But each category is different. The need states are different. The consumer buying behavior is different. A lot of things are very different. And actually, every category we get into, I myself personally need to have a clear understanding of the category because that's how the business works. Price points, products, strategy, consumer segments, which is making more gross margin, what is not. So every category we get into, I have to go through that learning. I mean, that's something, it's a great part of this because every time I'm doing, while I may be handling design for over 20 years, but over 20 years, different newer categories get added. So you have to do a deep immersion and a learning to be able to make sense out of that.
Beautiful. And I'm sure that there is also the other side to this, right? That so there is a, like a Titan-ness, like a Titan DNA that you have to filter everything through. And does it pass through that? So what is that sort of DNA that you build, which makes it Titan enough for it to be viable or worthy of release or, like a real product that you want to put in the market?
So what we've done is, since we look at design across all businesses, we said, what does Titan company design philosophy stand for? We've done adequate research and finally we came up with a very simple statement that design that inspires. It's such an open statement. Inspires whom? Inspires the creator, inspires the user, all of it. So, and the whole journey has to be inspiring. So that's a very broad definition of what we talk about the design philosophy for Titan.
Yeah.
And they are actually four key pillars on which this rests. It's about innovation or pioneering spirit, as we
Yeah.
call it.
Yeah.
It's about deep consumer understanding, deep design stories. We just don't start designing. We go to the story, we identify the story, the immersion, and all of that. So, deep design story and democratization of design. Because in most categories, except the luxury and the premium ones, we are really democratizing design. We are making it really accessible to everyone. So, we are not saying that great design has to be most expensive. Even the most reasonable product could have a fabulous design. So, these are the four key pillars. And when we look at, and as you know, in our portfolio, we have about 14 odd brands, and each brand has its own brand philosophy. A Fast Track is different from a Raga, is different from a Tanishq, is different from a Mia.
Yeah.
And each brand has its own brand philosophy, and hence we derive the design philosophy for each brand based on that. But what we are saying that as a guardrail, we have an overarching design philosophy, which is the design that inspires. So kind of acts like a guardrail, so that each brand will design and do as per what the brand needs, but will be in a way governed by this. So we have created this so that more or less whatever comes out from a Titan company portfolio, you could still see these design principles being followed everywhere. That's how we manage
So it's
it.
highly breathable. It's
It is, it
highly
is.
flexible, and
Yes.
yet it's there.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, of the different brands and products that you handle, Edge is one of the products I wanted to talk about. I know that you've really come a long way on that innovation journey, sort of keeping a lot of things consistent, and yet at the same time, kind of really transforming that product and pushing the limits of where it can go from. I think in your early days there was the classics, and then you had the skeletals, and then you
Right.
had you introduced ceramics,
Yeah.
and then I think it's
Squircle.
Squircle, and now I think Ultra Slim,
Slim, yeah.
is
Yeah.
your latest
Yeah,
release,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
What has that innovation journey been like, and
Yeah.
how did you consistently commit to it?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question because in this organization, everybody asks this question, what is the next edge? Meaning, what is the next breakthrough? And it's
Yeah.
not easy to come up with breakthrough innovation, every year.
Yeah.
So, edge is something we had fabulous innovation, the slimmest watch in the universe kind of a platform. And, when it was new for the first 4 years, it was really successful because of the way it was. So, we just did simple, classical, little modern touch to that edge, and it just performed very well. Then after that, this question of what next? What next? So,
Yeah.
a platform like Edge, you have to own with pride. Do newer things, so you're also talking to the evolving consumer.
Right.
So if you forget the consumer, then we can have the same product and say that, oh, okay, it's the time is over. So what we did was we kept on shifting as the consumer preferences were changing. So we launched, I think, sometime around 2006 or 7, the first Edge. Then around 2013, we did a skeletal Edge and with titanium. And that time we said, it is not just the slimmest watch, it is also the lightest watch. And that went on to win the Red Dot Award. So that was the Edge
Wow.
skeletal, which happened in 13. And then in 17, we really gave it a thrust and we said a platform like Edge, we really need to experiment with material. So that became a strategy, and material innovation was really the key. So we came with Edge ceramic. Edge ceramic in different shades, and especially the blue one, which you would have seen, is a runaway success. And people
Yeah.
just lapped it up, and Edge was really back in business, and there was so much demand for Edge. It looked fabulous.
Was it ahead of its time then in the whole ceramic
No,
story?
I think ceramic was just in time. We were not ahead of time. It was the right watch for the modern woman,
Yeah.
for the modern man. Sorry, at that point in time, and it was just fabulous. And then we started experimenting with different colors, and multiple things paid off around 2017, 18. Then the other innovation we had seeded at that point in time was carbon fiber. We said that carbon fiber and forged carbon, they are two very interesting materials. And if you were to kind of do a case, again, carbon fiber is very light.
Right.
It kind of goes with the property of edge. And we were trying to achieve that. That came in a little later because that work and getting it right took some time. And we also worked on this, by the time the whole mechanical and the automatic space
Yeah.
had become very interesting. And we had to do the slimmest mechanical. And that was again a movement innovation. We were all the while we were working on quads, slimmest quads movement. Then we
Wow.
had the slimmest mechanical, which was another breakthrough in terms of platform innovation.
Right.
So when that happened, that was another thing which got a lot of attention and really pushed the premiumization journey of Edge significantly
Sure.
with the slim mechanical movement. Then came carbon fiber after that. And then we said that something like a Edge, we need to own the design in the sense we need to create a signature, a property which remains with us and which is not just one more round case. And that was when we came with the Edge Squircle.
Yeah.
We own the dimensions, the ratios are all ours, and we created a very beautiful watch called Edge Squircle, which is really the signature of
Yeah.
Edge. And then we experimented Edge Squircle in multiple materials like ceramics and all of that, and it did extremely well. And the most recent innovation, which is also, we participated in GPHG last year, was the ultra slim Edge. It's really slim. It's slimmer than the slimmest, and
It's at
got
3.3,
one- Yeah,
Anna?
it's a 3.3, and it's got a single hand.
Yes.
A different way of seeing time. That's so we are constantly pushing the innovation angle on Edge, either through movement innovation or through material innovation, and always keeping in pace with what the consumer is seeking.
Yeah.
But this is a platform we are very proud to own, and it's been a great journey.
I hear you say the consumer a lot, and it's the consumer is obviously at the center of what you're building.
Yes, yes.
I know that you work with a great trend research team. How has that been, and how has the team worked along with designers, and how does all of this get dovetailed beautifully in order to create products that are, super relevant and viable and moving with the times?
I think that is very, very important. So this came in our life much later. So, in the initial phase of design, we were, of course, looking at user. We were looking at our own inspiration, and we were creating what we were creating. But the world is transforming, world is changing, internet, digital, all of that. Everything is available to us like this instantly.
Yeah.
And what happens around the world has impact on us, all of us as consumers in a greatly. In fact, our attitude, our behavior, our reaction to things, it all matters.
Yeah.
So this whole thinking about looking at trends not just superficially, but a deep dive. So we set up a trend research team who's constantly looking at, of course, the mega trends, the macro trends, and the micro trends, and category-specific trends, and coming up with saying that these are the things that are happening. So this is really the outside-in perspective. So when I look at design now, I say a great design comes when you look at, it's a great amalgamation. I call it the secret formula of figuring out the in-depth understanding of the user, looking at what the trends are and what trends are going to make an impact, and a great inspiration. Amalgamation of all three, what comes out is really the super success formula. So trends have become very important, and we have a very efficient team looking at it, and the team makes predictions. We have gone back and checked on our predictions, and we are pretty confident about where we are. And I think this is something very special we have set up at Titan. I don't know how many companies in India are looking at trends the way we are looking, and that really gives us the edge. Coming to your point about how the teams work together. So when the trends research team presents to us, to all the design team members and to the brand and marketing team members about what's really going to happen, what are the big macro trends, how the world is looking at it, and we also make it little category specific. The design team then looks at it and say that, wow, this trend is really big, but maybe I can draw a deep design story which is backed by this trend. So the design team comes up with a story and an inspiration which is linked to that particular macro trend, so that it is kind of relevant. So this kind of revalidates that what you're going to do is kind of validated by what the world is going to be seeing.
Yeah.
So that validation really helps. And we do a deep design story based on those trends, and then those stories we get into our inspiration, and then the rest of the things which really follow that.
Yeah. And, when it comes to depth, I feel like Titan really commits and then sort of, really walks the talk and goes the whole way. And I think the recent collaboration with Zoya and Alice Ciccolini would be a great case in point, where, if I'm not wrong, you've been speaking for about 5 years plus, and you just released The Drop with Alice Ciccolini, right? And that has such a beautiful story of a woman from, I think, the 19th century, if
Yeah,
I'm not wrong, who inspired a woman who recently, went there and wrote a book. And then that inspired Alice Ciccolini and Zoya to do this together. And I think that whole kind of brand truth of the heroine's journey comes together so beautifully there. So how did you guys craft this entire journey and commit to it for 5 years?
Yeah, in fact, this is very, very inspiring, So it was Alexandra David Neal's journey. And she went to Lhasa and she was inspired herself. And she went to Lhasa in that period and to just explore. And she got so inspired and she met Dalai Lama and she looked at various things. So it's her story. So Alice, in fact, took inspiration from Alexandra's story.
Right.
And when we looked at it from a Zoya point of view, we found our muse in Alexandra David Neal, who was so courageous even at that point in time and to explore and live out her life, and Zoya is all about celebrating the woman's inner journey. So, it was really bang on and it kind of was the Zoya woman we were seeking. So, and that story was so rich in terms of, what she explored, the architecture. And Alice, the designer, viewed it in her own manner and she interpreted that story in a certain way. And her forte is about enamel, Indian Meenakari. So she gave a, very interesting twist to Indian Meenakari, the colors we have chosen, the forms which are based on architecture. So that gave rise to a collection which was so differentiated yet so relevant for the Indian market. But the challenge was, of course, this 5-year thing, what we spoke about, it was all about getting it right. Because of the enamel colors are so unique. We were trying things for the first time in India. And we would try the color, we would do everything, and you would fire it and it would fail. So there was a lot of experimentation. There was a lot of R&D to get those colors right.
Wow.
And the forms were also very differentiated, very architectural. And so getting the forms right, getting the enamel colors right. And this process has taken us quite some time. And of course, COVID played spoil sport in between. So one year you take it off for COVID. Still, we have spent about 4 years in perfecting this. So one good thing is, if you got to get something great, and if every patron of Zoya today feels so good wearing it, they would know that we have spent that amount of time to get it right. So each piece, the enamel, they would mix, they would do it. So it's done painstakingly. So great things do take time. So this is that way. But I think the greatness is all about, all the teams, all of us, we were with it. We didn't just drop it. We said, let's perfect it. There is some magic sitting in this. We will get it right and we will do it. And I think that patience, even in our organization, which is a fast-paced organization, is really commendable. And that has given us this amazing collection, which is a limited edition capsule of 19 pieces with Alice.
And I think the beautiful byproduct of this might be that although Meenakari as a craft, of course, is hundreds of years old in India, if not thousands, I don't even know. The fact that you've innovated on a craft that is this old and figured out how to do certain colors which initially failed, maybe because that's never been done in Meenakari before. I think you've also kind of fed back into the legacy of the craft.
Absolutely. I think you're right. We have done it. So I think that's where the innovation. You take your cultural codes, you see what is existing, and you bring in the modernity, you bring in the relevance of today's age and do things and move on. And I think that's how innovations happen. And that's really the way to look at it.
Yeah. And your jewelry spans, so Zoya at one end, where you're building this beautiful luxury brand, no compromises, and a legacy brand, in every way. At the other end, we also have Mia, where, and I think I could be wrong, Revathi, please correct me, but I think it kind of started from the thought that working women were not wearing real jewelry, precious jewelry to work.
Yes, you're right.
And how could we change that? And therefore, I think that was one of the core thoughts of Mia. And today, of course, Mia's a thriving brand where I think it's got very wide patronage across a range of age groups. And so what has that been like to build for you?
So when we looked at this, as in Titan, we look at the overall business opportunity. So we looked at a lot of women like us, going to office, not wearing prestigious jewelry. So that was the question. You're all getting dressed up. You're going to office, but why are you not wearing jewelry? Is there an opportunity? So in-depth research there and across various centers in India. This was, I think, few years back. I clearly remember women coming out and saying all these daily wear jewelry, the so-called daily wear jewelry which you have, are so boring, see, are so traditional. It is not what I want to wear to work, so I
Right.
don't want them. Second, our jewelry, earlier was more from a preciousness quotient. So we never looked at this woman. We made daily wear jewelry, we made heavy jewelry for occasions. But where was this woman? Where when she was getting ready, going to office? What was her need state? What was it she was seeking? We never understood.
Yeah.
So when we went into that, there were very simple things. And like all of us, I mean, in the morning, all of us are rushing. How much time do we have? I mean, we put on our clothes, we just do our hair and just little bit and you rush.
Yeah.
So where is the time to put a jewelry and that, that screwing the back, all of that?
Yeah.
So the first and the most important thing which came out clear, I want it to be very easy to wear. I don't have the time to screw and do all of this and it precious and all that. So it's got to be something which is very easy to wear. Second, I don't want to spend so much money on a jewelry.
Right.
It has to be very lightweight. One is two angles to it. Lightweight because it's to be comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm going to be wearing it the whole day and sitting in my office. And it has to be very lightweight. So Mia jewelry became lightweight.
Yeah.
Second is I'm just earning. I don't have so much money to spend on jewelry. But if you're saying you buy jewelry, give me jewelry which is affordable.
Yeah.
So it was comfort, it was affordability, it was very easy to wear, and modern designs. They wanted designs which they could wear with the clothes they were wearing.
Which kept up with the Indian women and how she had evolved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, it was when we started Mia, I remember this because in all the research, it was jeans with kurti was really the big thing when it started. Short kurta with jeans, you remember? Almost 15 years back was what most of the Indian women were wearing, the modern forms. So I think that was the starting point of understanding this woman who was very different. And the same lady, the same woman could be wearing very different kind of jewelry when she's going for some party in the evening or when she's going for a wedding. But for her office wear, she wanted something very different which didn't exist. And that was the white space for Mia, which we kind of understood. And it was not easy. We did pilot, we did a ethno-contemporary collection, we did a modern collection. We kept refining as we went along to understand what is it that she is lacking. And as you said, now Mia is rocking, we are doing very well.
Yeah.
We have understood and how she is moving and keeping pace with her, giving her what she really wants. So I think I again go back to this user. It's very important. The person who is wearing, person who is going to consume, we need to get into her head and understand her heart, her head, her mind or whatever.
Yeah.
What is it that we need to do? So I think that is a very fundamental level I would want every designer to understand. It is, you can create something so beautiful, but we are in business. We want it to sell. It has to make top line. It has to make bottom line. It has to make money. So it is not just about beauty, is what I would say. It is beauty with a purpose.
Yeah. When I walk into Mia stores, I also find that it is starting to cater to younger and younger audiences. And of course, these are the premium and luxury buyers of the future.
Yeah.
Is that right? Are you also looking at, girls in their teens or women in their early 20s onwards?
The target is for young women. And,
Yeah.
a lot of these young, college-going students and just about graduating are also definitely our target audience. Because now jewelry is very much in vogue. And jewelry is coming in different carat. See, the other thing Mia did was to launch 14 carat. It was a very bold step at that point in time. No other brand was offering 14 carat. 14 carat gave you the sturdiness. 14 carat gave you the rate advantage, the affordability factor which they were seeking.
Right.
So it was kind of mixed in India. It's a mixed reaction. Some regions love A14, some possibly don't. But that gave an opportunity for us to cater to a certain audience who was seeking that.
You've come this far, Revathi. You've just completed 35 years at Titan. I think it's been a lifetime of commitment to this one organization and helping to build it out, being one of the, big contributors to what it is today. What would you say you are, eventually going to leave behind for design at Titan and for thought process and for ethos in terms of, everything that's going to happen in the decades to come?
Right. So, see, I feel whatever has happened to design in Titan should happen to India. In a sense, design has to become really prominent in India. With all this Make in India being such an important objective of our Prime Minister, being driven, and we are really seeing that with all the geopolitical what is happening, Make in India, if it's got to be successful, I strongly believe that, design in India has to be an imperative. Because that is what feeds into this. We just need some of us to take on that role and kind of, push it ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe it needs to happen at two ends, in two ways. So one is at the level of curriculum of
Yeah.
the NIDs and the NIFTs and
Right.
the what have you. There has to be that awareness of design. Yes, you've learned, you've studied design, but then how do you contextualize it? How do you recognize where those areas that need design, and then how do you kind of go about solving those problems? And I think at the other end there has to be that acceptance from policy level, from government
Yes.
level, that yes, we need designers, like you're saying, in order to
Absolutely.
solve a multitude of problems. And then that bridging between
You're right.
the two,
Yeah.
where it can really start to have an impact in a way that we
Yes.
all so desperately need.
You're right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it'll be great if people like you kind of, start thinking along in terms of this.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's lots of designers who would just love to join you.
And I
do
think,
this with
also, but I'd just like to add here in this podcast that, our curriculum also need to, kind of, what do you call, modify to keeping with the
Yes,
times. In the
yes.
sense, what I feel, I recruit a lot of youngsters. So
Yeah.
when they come in, they are technically savvy, they know how to design, they know all of this, the basic software, all of it. But the whole contextual understanding of you're now getting into an organization, so you need to look at design not only from a design lens,
Yeah.
beyond that. So this whole thing of design management, looking at innovation, looking at innovation in technology and in material,
Yeah.
varied fields, user-centric research. I think these things have to be embedded in the curriculum throughout so that they come up with a holistic view of design. Design is not just designing.
Yeah.
That's a very important skill set, I understand. But beyond that, so that they are able to, as soon as you come into an organization, come into work, they're able to apply and start showing results. But today it takes at least 2 years for us to train them to think in a certain manner to start delivering results. So I think that would be good for India to expedite the whole thing.
Yeah, as a mandate into design curricula.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know that empathy and emotional resonance mean a lot to you as a leader and as a person. What is your personal definition of doing this in a way that is meaningful?
See, for me, meaningful design is actually more like a holistic approach, okay, which encompasses creativity, strategic thinking, empathy, and to craft something which makes a difference to somebody. For example, let me say that a meaningful design has to create a positive impact for you, okay? So it can create a positive impact for you if it's going to solve some problem of yours, or if it is going to satisfy your desire quotient. It has to do either this or that.
Yeah.
Then you feel, there are so many things you buy and you are like, oh my God, this is what I wanted.
Yeah.
Or this, my God, so simple, but this solved my problem.
Right.
That is that. The second thing could also be about, cultural nuances. I feel something is meaningful if you're culturally coded. Because there's a lot of narrative, there's a lot of storytelling, you really go back and you really think, oh my God, we are coming from there and this is how that culture is reinterpreted for me in this form. So then you're engaging with it. So design becomes meaningful when it has got certain, cultural codes to it.
Yeah.
And the third and most important thing which I have always spoken is about authenticity. For me, authenticity in design is very important for it to be meaningful, because the minute you're authentic, when you're creating something, you're being true to the ethos of the brand, and then there is nothing like that, because that's unique for that. So I would think these three things would really, to me, means that it is an approach to creating meaningful design.
Yeah. And what about as a person? Because I know that, you wear many hats and you kind of manage everything beautifully at the same time. We all go through multiple challenges in life, and at the same time far from given up, you've just kind of gone on and on forging ahead. How did you balance everything, and how do you make it make sense to you, and, sort of make it make sense to you in an authentic way?
You know what? I really believe in one quote, and I read it somewhere. It's not mine, and I really follow that. So it's like this. Life is a fine balance between making things happen and letting things happen. I really live by that. There are so many things which are just not in your control. You just let it happen.
Yeah.
I mean, the minute we are thinking about it, it's causing so much of trauma and various other things. And it's once we understand that, all of us go through it, as you say. There are so many things which are happening around us which can disturb, and it disturbs me, of course. The one grounding mechanism I have is I am also deeply rooted in spirituality for past many years, and I am a Reiki master healer. So I that is really where I find myself. I get that inspiration from my inner self.
Yeah.
I just go quiet. I go within myself. It is I meditate and I get the divine healing energy for my own self, and I think that has kept me going. I mean, life has thrown a lot of oddballs at me, while the journey has been interesting, but there were lots and lots of challenges which I have faced, and personally and all of that. But it is just you don't have a choice. Many a times you have to just accept it. So it is. I meditate. I go on to my inner self. I try to get divine healing energy, and I heal myself, and that kind of brings me back to where I am. And I also believe in achieving a great deal of, I like to be balanced in some way or the other, because not too much of this or too much of that. And this has taught me a lot of things about being more empathetic, more compassionate, more giving, more loving, and less expecting. So that kind of helps me, is what I would say.
How does Reiki work?
Reiki is actually a divine healing energy, and you are attuned to it. I mean, it is not really taught like that. A master has to attune you to Reiki. Once you have attunement, there are now various branches of Reiki. Otherwise, earlier form was the Usui form of Reiki, Usui Mikao, who originated Reiki. So once you're able to do it, you're able to channel the divine healing energy. And there is various levels to it. In the first level, once you are attuned to it,
Yeah.
you can heal yourself by touch. You can heal somebody else by touching them. And the minute you have, so there are certain divine symbols which are attuned to you. In the second level, you get the symbol by which you can do a healing at a distance without, I can heal you from here, I don't have to touch you. So there are multiple levels, the Reiki level 3 and 4, and you either go on to become a Reiki master healer or a Reiki master teacher. So teacher requires a lot more of commitment in time and so many people. So I have given my life, chosen to be a healer. So I heal whoever comes to me, asks for
Really?
Reiki healing. I do that, and yeah, Reiki has been part of my life. It's a big anchor in my life.
So everything is really energy. Is that true according to your experience?
Yeah, exactly. So our thoughts are nothing but energy. What we think, what we send out in the universe, and the whole law of attraction
Yeah.
we talk about, it is all based on energy. That's why they say think positive, do not think negative, because you don't know what will come back. Because the universe is constantly listening. It's simple. I mean, listening in the sense it's about resonance. It's physics. So you're a certain thought, and there is something which resonates with the universe, you get it back. That
Yeah.
gets amplified, right? So it's as simple as physics. So everything about us is energy. Every thought is an energy. Interaction between two people, energy. Aura is energy. So what through Reiki, what we do is we just, you just clean up the aura, you clean up the energy, you just define the flow, and you're just getting the universal energy into you. That's all it is. So that's Reiki, yeah.
And I'm sure that this also impacts a lot of other lives. The fact that you are yourself a healer, you would have had that impact on a lot of people that you've healed.
Touch
Have you?
wood, yes,
Do
yeah,
they come back
so
to you and tell you about
They do.
that?
They do. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And finally, Revathi, I want to ask you, because the Iconic Women podcast is also about women who've come before us, and it's in great part because of them that today we can do the things that we do and have the decisions that we have, that are ours to make. If I were to ask you, who is that woman from history, who's inspired you or means something to you, who would you say that is, and why?
I think not very popular figure, okay? And from the history in South India, Rani Velu Nachiyar.
Yeah.
She is known as the Veeramangai, and it was so intriguing to know that she is the one, even before the freedom fight movement started in India in the 1800s, 1857.
1857.
She, in fact, she won a war against British in 1780. She won the war, and she was the first one to have an all-women army. Can you imagine then?
Wow.
And she was not the one to kind of, compromise and I believe she worked with warriors. She lost her husband, who was also against British, and then she took it to herself that I'm going to win. So 8 years she went on hibernation. She literally was working with warriors, and Hyder Ali apparently helped her, and she went on to win this war. So she is known in history as a first revolutionary woman leader of those years.
Wow.
Can you imagine? It's so amazing and so intriguing. But I had not known about her, so she's not popularly known. So I want to talk about her, like Rani Velu Nachiyar, the Veera Mangai of Tamil Nadu. She was from Shivaganga. Amazing personality.
And Veera
I see
Mangai
that
means?
she's also a nurturer and she's
Yeah.
a warrior. And she brought up her daughter, who went on to succeed her and became the queen and all of that. So imagine, we talk of things we do today, but imagine doing things then. Look at the thought process of that lady at that point in time, given her constraints, her situation.
Yeah.
She had a young child to look after, but she had, the lioness, the warrior in her.
Yeah.
How she went on to win. And it's amazing. So I was so inspired by her, really.
She's really giving me the Rani Lakshmibai vibes. I can
Yes.
imagine a little baby strapped to her and then on the
yes.
battlefield.
Right.
Yeah.
Similar. Yeah.
But you mentioned Hyder Ali, and I feel that if you compare how many books there are about Tipu and Hyder Ali
Yeah.
versus how many books there are about her, I've barely even heard about her, you know.
Yeah, she's not well known. It's so sad. There are so many such prominent figures in our history whom we don't know about. And they have done it, they have conquered it all. I'm sure there are a lot of lessons for each one of us to learn from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's bring her alive.
Yes.
By dressing you up as her and having you embody your woman hero, your
Thank
Shiro.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that
thank
would
you
be
so
great.
much for being on this podcast.
Thank you so much, Kadambari. I must also appreciate the platform you have built. I
Thank you
think
so much.
you have given a space to voice, a voice to women who have done something here, done something in the country, and I think it's a fabulous platform. You must keep it going and build it bigger and better. And I'm sure all the
Yes.
very best to you.
Thank you.
For this wonderful
Hopefully.
thought process.
Thank you, Revathi.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Revathi talked about a very brave and somewhat forgotten woman from history, Rani Velu Nachiyar from Sivaganga in Tamil Nadu. For the look, I used Revathi's own sari, which is an heirloom Kanjivaram from her mother-in-law. I draped it in the Maharashtrian style, which was commonly worn by royalty and warriors in the time, especially since it allowed women to ride horseback. A stole from my collection was draped as a turban. And a brocade sash was used as the belt to get her battle ready. I added the jewelry, which is of course pearls, because royalty has always been associated with pearls, and then heavy earrings and a necklace. And then I drew in the bindi by hand with a lipstick, and then with the sword in her hand, the look was complete.